world, basically. It's yeah, exactly. Kind of intriguing. Um, but the connection is that Elizabeth, of course, promotes this philosophical connection between Nietzsche and Hitler. In fact, there's a let me click on the pictures and see if we can find Nietzsche as a young man. Schopenhauer, we talked about that. Oh, this is interesting. So this is Nietzsche and a poet, and oh, I forget her name offhand. Does it say underneath here? Oh yeah, okay. Lou Salome is the woman. Notice Paul Ray and Nietzsche are the horses pulling the carriage, and she's the driver with the whip, as if she's whipping them, right? And it was actually a love triangle. Both of the guys were after Lou, and Paul was the one that won, and so Nietzsche is the one left out. He never got the girl, you know. That's it's interesting because it makes her look like a dominatrix in a sense. Which she, in a sense, might have been thought of as such. There's actually a movie. Oh, I was looking for a different picture though at the time. I guess when Elizabeth is taking care of him. There's his grave. Oh, that rock is the rock where he suddenly had the inspiration to write Thus Spake Zarathustra.
In the Alps.
Yeah, that's an alpine village on the walking path to the hotel. Oh shoot, it doesn't show it. So let's do this. Hitler and the bust of Nietzsche. I don't know if you could see any of these, but this is shoot. Oh, that's Elizabeth presenting Hitler his walking stick, Nietzsche's walking stick. But oh, did that went off? That wouldn't have been seen. But in any case, you can see he's standing in that house where Nietzsche died, which is a museum now, but it's still there, and you could go and see that bust stand there where Hitler was. But you could see he was paying his homage to Nietzsche because he thought Nietzsche's philosophy essentially represented the key philosophy for the fascist Reich, right? By the way, there are a lot of folks that love the philosopher Nietzsche or love Nietzsche's works and try to make it look like Nietzsche's works did not really support something like the Third Reich, and they blame it on Elizabeth. That Elizabeth re-edited his works to make it look like the philosophy did support the Reich. I think it's much more complex than that because I think Nietzsche's philosophy does actually support a strong man with a will, that will dominate and wipe out the weak. I mean, Nietzsche actually writes this stuff, in some of his texts. So, very interesting. But our task really is, how do you argue for a particular meta-narrative for a particular moral point of view, because it seems like when you get right down to it, moral statements are neither true nor false. And in the sense that you can't verify them. You can't scientifically check and find out if the good is caring for others. You can't check and see if the good is having power over others. In fact, you could probably come up with lots of other variants. But science doesn't have a way of checking that. Now, if
didn't the video you watched about Sam Harris
yes,
say that there's some scientific basis for morality?
Yes, he argues that happiness is the basis for morality, and that's the weakness of his argument, because just like Nietzsche saying power is the basis for morality, or Aquinas, the Christian culture, arguing that God's love for us and our love for others, love your neighbor as yourself, is essentially the main principle of morality, are in the same boat as Sam Harris, arguing that it's happiness. And you can examine a person's brain to find out if they're happy or not. And you can measure it. And we can literally measure how much happiness there is by the decisions we make. That's a utilitarian point of view. So
isn't ethics something that you can actually measure though too? Because I know that like when you see something that's ethically wrong or morally wrong, something like flips in your brain. You know, it highlights the like disgust regions of your brain, and so you feel like that's wrong. And I think I'm pretty sure that's what kind of guides our morality as a culture, is kind of whether something lights up or not.
Right, but here's the issue: how did that become part of the way you respond to those stimuli? It would have been your culture, it seems, that does that. Now, there is a biological basis for disgust, but it seems to be trained by the particular culture, by our language, and so on.
But it's equally valid in each culture then, because it's
Some.
still...
It seems to me that some things are based on our biological reaction. But those don't seem to be sufficient to develop the kind of ethical theory that we're really concerned about. Does that mean you should love others? I mean, you know, if we examine mice, what we discover is that mice treat other mice nicely depending on the degree of difference genetically there is between those mice, so that they treat, you know, brothers and sisters very nicely, and, you know, cousins a little bit less nicely, and so on. But there's enemies of the clan of the mice or whatever that, you know, are they're going to be hostile to, and they're not going to share things with, as far as, you know, when we study mice. And that actually seems to apply to people as well. I mean, you know, when you think of people in a community, they love their families first, you know, then they love their relatives next, and then they love the others that are locally near them, others that are members of the same kind of social organizations that they belong to. You know, so there's degrees of difference where we're willing to support other people. Something that people like Steven Pinker argue, that, you know, in The Better Angels of Our Nature, or in Enlightenment Now, that our education, I can bring up Steven Pinker if you like.
I have a book by him. I'm not sure which one.
Well, here's his more recent ones. The Better Angels of Our Nature.
Ooh, The Stuff of Thought.
Oh, The Stuff of Thought. That's pretty old, actually.
2005.
but he still is of that same opinion that all of our thinking is physically based on the mind, as opposed to something extra physical, such as quantum interrelationships, I guess would be the main physical theory that's different. My favorite, actually, is the OR theory. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. Orchestrated
I'm holding on to that
objective
because that's
reduction
like the only
theory.
way to break out of determinism.
Yes, yes, that's
Only way
my
free will is possible.
my thought exactly. At least if you're accepting a physical, non-ghostly kind of spiritual thing.
I like OR because I think if you like look back through history at how people react to like Nobel Prize winners, like when they first have like an idea, it's like a very specific reaction. It's like a very vulgar kind of like just dislike of it, and that's kind of what the field feels towards OR. It's not just I don't know. It just has the same pattern. So I don't know if it's true or not. I don't have a degree in quantum mechanics, but
No, this is there's a consciousness conference. I get ads for them. You know, I've never been to Santa Fe to the conferences or anything, but they're having one. I think in Madrid or something this summer, but and Stuart Hameroff is going to be there. I don't know if Roger Penrose is getting quite old, so I don't know whether he's going to make it or not. But so you know, the critique I have of Sam Harris is that he's arguing that happiness is the basis for ethics. And, you know, there are cultural groups, the imams in Islam consider happiness to be evil. You know, the more we try to have happiness in life, the more evil we are. You know, music is not allowed, for example. Although I recently saw an example of some kind of music that was permitted in Iran, actually. I'm wondering about how that happened, how they got away with that, because basically, since the Shah was overthrown, there are no orchestras allowed in Iran. People are not allowed to study musical instruments unless they sneak it. You know, it's haram. It's sinful to have fun, to enjoy yourself. So what I'm arguing here is that, you know, Sam Harris isn't going to be able to persuade the people of Iran who lead Iran and convince them that they ought to have more Western-like ethics and allow freedom and liberties and things that will end up with our kind of society. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Sam is thinking that our society is best, and we can prove it by looking at the happiness in the brains of people, and so that's the ethical high point is happiness. Well, that argument of his is exactly the same as Nietzsche, in my mind, as arguing that power is the highest ethic, or Thomas Aquinas or the Pope. I'm sure the Pope would say loving others is the highest ethic.
Okay, so it sounds like just trying to form like an ethical framework doesn't work.
That's all we've got, though. On the other hand, you need to be plugged into, even if you're supposedly creating your own new ethic moment by moment, however, that works for you, like Madonna, I don't know. I'd love to email her and ask her, are you still a Nietzschean? What do you think? How does that work for you?
You should. She might respond. You know?
Right.
I mean, if you say you're a logic professor, right?
I could get away with murder with that, right?
See,
Yeah.
I want to be an optimist about it, but as the child in me who wrote J.K. Rowling hundreds of times,
She never
she
responded.
never responds. And then I grow up and I find out she's actually a kind of a bad person. And I'm just like,
I don't know how she got such bad press. I always